welcome back to Cinema Wellman. I'm your host, David, and if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice I'm wearing my Upcycle t-shirt today, and I'm wearing that because today's episode is all about remakes and reboots, and what that really is the recycling bin of the cinematic world. And if you're anything like me, every time you read about a film, especially a film you like, being remade, rebooted, whatever you want to call it, you just shake your head in disbelief. My recurring thoughts about that subject are, I always think, they already did this. What are they doing? Do something new. Or the tried and true, once again, there is proof that there are no more original thoughts left in Hollywood. I think we've all said that. And I find it an annoying practice, and I think a lot of people do that as well. What might be kind of surprising is that it's been going on forever. They were remaking movies almost before there were movies to remake. And I realize that sounds silly, but the first known recorded remakes were actually made in the late 1890s. Cinema wasn't even a toddler, and already they were remaking things that they had pretty much just made. So I guess it doesn't matter if I was born in 1962 or 1885, I'd still be complaining about these remakes. So today we're not talking about sequels, we're not talking about prequels, we're not talking about legacy sequels, whatever those are, that's a new thing. We are talking remakes. Before we get on to some noteworthy remakes, I have some fun facts about remakes for you. Sometimes a remake is an American version of a foreign film. And spoiler alert, they never get it right. I think we've been over this before. Sometimes a remake is a remake of a black and white movie made in color, which kind of makes sense. Kon Ichikawa did the Burmese Harp twice. Black and white version in 1956, color version quite a bit later in 1985. Some remakes look nothing like the original. Just take a look at Scarface from 1932 and then that mess from 1983. Some don't look anything alike and others are identical. Director Michael Hanke did a shot-for-shot remake of his own 1997 film Funny Games in 2007, and I've seen both, and it's really weird to see both. The movie itself is really weird and disturbing, but when you watch them both back to back with different casts, but it's the same story, exactly same script, it's kind of bizarre. And if you do watch them back to back, you might need to seek professional help down the line. Speaking of shot-for-shot remakes, Gus Van Sant, who's a good director in my opinion, decided to do a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho in 1998 for some unknown reason. Talk about nobody asked for that. Why are you messing with Hitchcock? Speaking of, sometimes the remakes are made for TV movies. They made Rear Window as a TV movie in 1998. We love the genre of the TV movie here at Cinema Wellman. We did a whole episode about it, but Rear Window? No, you can't do that. You can't touch that. All right? And listen to me as well, Mr. Gus Van Sant, for tackling Psycho. Speaking of made-for-TV movies, I didn't realize this, but doing research for this piece, I found out that Heat, which is a Michael Mann film that I love with Robert De Niro and Val Kilmer, Al Pacino, it's a remake of a TV movie, and I don't recall that ever happening before. Sci-fi loves the remake and the reboot, and one of the reasons for that is because special effects get better. So if you have like a classic sci-fi film from the 50s that no one's touched, and it's the 90s or the 2000s, you're like, this is going to be amazing. We can update all of this stuff. For example, The Blob, The Fly, The Fog, they all did that. Sometimes the remake changes the title, and I don't know if that's to disguise or hide the fact that it's a remake. But have you heard of Infernal Affairs or The Sea or The Total with an exclamation point. If not, have you heard about The Departed, which I despise that movie. Have you heard about The Departed, The Lake House, and True Lies? Those are those movies. All three of those are remakes. The Departed, The Lake House, True Lies, all remakes of foreign films. Some movies get remade over and over again, and we're going to lead off today with one of those. But before I get to that, we'll talk about King Kong. 4 times. They did King Kong 4 times. They did the 39 Steps 4 times. They did Freaky Friday 4 times. Actually 5 if you count the recent film Freaky, and you should. If you haven't seen Freaky, see Freaky. It is, well, you know what I'm going to say. It's freaky. And they seem to be willing to remake anything. Nobody asked for remakes of Footloose or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory or RoboCop or Total Recall or Point Break or Rollerball, especially Rollerball. Nobody asked for that. New trend, headed by Disney. Disney's making live action versions of their animated films, and a majority of these are head scratchers, and they're met with much disdain and the grinding of teeth of loyal fans of the originals. I used to be like that about remakes, and now, to be honest with you, I don't care. If somebody wants to give me their version of it, that's fine. And I'll either see it or I won't see it. I used to get all up in arms and on my soapbox. How dare they? I think I did that earlier this episode about Rear Window. But in any event, go ahead. Go ahead and do it. And if it's good and it can stand on its own or pay homage to a great film from the past, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that leads me to the fact I'm not suggesting that they're all bad. Some of them are very, very good, even though nobody asked for them. And that's a point I want to make. I don't think you ever see a film and then say, that was great. I love that. That's such a great movie. I can't wait till they remake it. I don't think anybody says that. So keep that in mind with all of this, that nobody asked for any of it. But some of the recent ones that I thought were decent: War of the Worlds, original in '53, and the remake with Tom Cruise in 2005. Carrie, which I talked about in the Stephen King Goes to the Movies episode, original '76, remake in 2013. Taking a Pelham 123, which is a film I love, 1974, and then again 2009. Great classic Western, 310 to Yuma, from 1957, remade in 2007. Thomas Crown Affair, oh my goodness, 1968, Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway, and then 1999 with a lesser cast, but how can you beat Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway? Secret Life of Walter Mitty, 1947, and then in 2013, West Side Story. We just saw Spielberg do that in 2021. The original was in 1961. Narrow Margin, a great train thriller, 1952, and then 1990, True Grit, 1969, and then made by great friends of Cinema Wellman, the Coen brothers, in 2010, and Ransom, 1956 and 1996. Now, in these cases, the remakes are pretty far apart, so introducing these stories to new generations makes total sense to me, and I don't have a problem with it, although if you ever see something that's a remake, do yourself a favor and watch the original as well, and watch it first. So let's begin today with the story that Hollywood can't help itself from telling, and that's A Star Is Born. We have gotten 4 versions of A Star Is Born: 1937, 1954, 1976, and the most recent one in 2018. First off, you have to applaud the fact that the original and the most recent remake were made 81 years apart. So it's a story that every generation seems to get their own version of, which is pretty cool. And with the top-notch roster of talent that they keep casting in these remakes, why not? And I have a feeling that Hollywood's not done yet with A Star Is Born. 37, we had Janet Gaynor and Frederick March. 54, Judy Garland and James Mason. 76, Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson. And 2018, Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. And One of the things about the story that lends itself to multiple remakes is the story is timeless. I'm going to read you the IMDb synopses for all four very quickly and listen to the pattern. 1937, a young woman comes to Hollywood with dreams of stardom and achieves them only with the help of an alcoholic leading man whose best days are behind him. 1954, a film star helps a young singer and actress find fame, even as age and alcoholism send his own career on a downward spiral. 1976, a has-been rock star falls in love with a young, up-and-coming songstress. 2018, a musician helps a young singer find fame as age and alcoholism sends his own career into a downward spiral. IMDb even rebooted its synopsis from 1954. So as I mentioned, it's a timeless story, and no matter how you slice it, it is pretty grim. Spoiler alert, if you somehow have never seen any of these versions, you might want to cover your ears. The guy always ends up walking into the ocean or hanging in his garage. I mean, they are great movies, but you will not be smiling at the end of any of them. Next, let's talk about Seven Samurai, remade as The Magnificent Seven. Here's a story that's told on screen 3 times. The transition from the ancient samurai film to the Old West Western, that's one of my favorite genre switches in film history. Seven Samurai, directed by the phenomenal, legendary director Akira Kurosawa. His influence over other filmmakers is well documented. Kurosawa's The Hidden Fortress from 1958 inspired George Lucas to make Star Wars. You might have heard of that. Yojimbo, Kurosawa made in 1961, was turned into a Western by Sergio Leone 3 years later, titled For a Fistful of Dollars with a young Clint Eastwood. Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, critically regarded as one of the best films of all time, turned into a Western in 1960 by director John Sturges and updated in 2016 by Antoine Fuqua. So not a bad trio of directors right there. Since Seven Samurai takes place in 1586 and the remakes take place in the American Old West, we have another story that's just transcending time. All 3 versions feature a group of mercenaries / gunslingers, samurai, who accept the seemingly impossible job for a group of people in need. There's a small, defenseless group of villagers who are helpless and being threatened by a bad man and his gang of bad men, and our heroes come in, and they work together, and they save the day. And it's a great story that works in 1586, and it works again almost 300 years later. The music in the 1960 version is absolutely amazing, as is the scenery. See the Kurosawa original and the 1960 Sturges version. See them back to back, and you'll be in for quite a film experience. If I owned a theater, I would show that every single week. The next grouping is 1951, 1982, 2001. First, The Thing from Another World, and then the other 2 were just called The Thing. This trifecta has something in common with the previous trio in that the original and the first remake are tremendous, and the most recent remake is decent, but not as good as either of the 2 that preceded it. And that often happens with these. Sci-fi was king back in the 50s, along with the Western, the 2 biggest genres of the entire decade. And Howard Hawks' sci-fi horror film, The Thing from Another World, is about a group of scientists fighting a bloodthirsty alien organism at a remote Arctic outpost. First of all, any sci-fi horror film that's set in a remote Arctic outpost is going to be worth the price of admission right there. The original is excellent, but I think John Carpenter's 1982 remake with Kurt Russell is even better. As I mentioned earlier, with sci-fi being remade, there's an improvement in special effects. And that means that Carpenter's version is quite bloody. People and dogs split open and other things come out of them. It's quite disturbing. It's quite wet. But if you like sci-fi and you haven't seen these, see these, and again, see them back to back and in order. Next, we have political thriller. The first one in 1962, the remake in 2004, and it's titled The Manchurian Candidate. And this political thriller centers around a soldier who is brainwashed into becoming an unwitting assassin. Story basically has three major characters. We have the brainwashed soldier, Raymond Shaw, played by Lawrence Harvey, and then in the remake, Liev Schreiber. We have Shaw's close friend, Ben Marco, original, Frank Sinatra, remake, Denzel Washington, and Shaw's mother, Eleanor, original, Angela Lansbury, remake, Meryl Streep. So if you listen to those people, and if you have these few roles to cast in this film, and you come up with those groupings, it's going to be fantastic. And add to that two fantastic directors, John Frankenheimer and Jonathan Demme. Both do a terrific job, as they usually do. The posters are 100% true in both cases. And I'm going to read to you what the posters say. And this is a little tease coming up for our next two episodes, which are titled The 70s Show, Part 1 and Part 2, where I'm going to highlight my favorite films from the decade of the 70s. And yeah, there are that many, so it's going to be a two-parter. But one of the things I'm going to concentrate there in those episodes are on what is written on the posters, because that decade, movie posters were amazing with just the information that they gave you. So let's look at the movie posters for The Manchurian Candidate first. From the original, you must not miss the first 5 minutes to know what it's about. When you've seen it all, you'll swear there's never been anything like it. A crackling conspiracy thriller, brilliantly engrossing, and this is for the remake. Meryl Streep, utterly terrifying. Nailed it, no notes. See both of these again, see them in order as always. One more thing about remakes and reboots, I wanted to mention an excellent triple feature, all based on the same novel from 1954, written by Richard Matheson. And the movies are titled The Last Man on Earth, The Omega Man, and I Am Legend, made in 1964, 1971, and 2007, respectively. End of days situations and the last man on earth and things like that. All three are very, very, very worthy of your time. So we're all done here, but I did want to talk to you a little bit about Upcycled. Since we're basically talking about cinema's recycling bin, just a quick shout out to the good people at Upcycled. That's why I wore my Upcycled t-shirt for this episode. Upcycled Incorporated is a waste division organization as part of the precious plastics community. And on the blog, you can I put a link to that website for you. What Upcycle does is it takes discarded plastics and upcycles them into long-term use products. Since their start just 2 years ago, Upcycled has upcycled over 3,000 pounds of plastic, turning that unwanted plastic into useful configurations. They create products such as benches and garden beds that can be used to reach their mission of giving plastic a long-term purpose and creating a more environmentally conscious community. Great work being done there by phenomenal people. Kudos to co-founders Orlando and Freddie and Allison and the board of directors and everyone else working with Upcycled. Keep fighting the good fight, people. We love you. Cinema Wellman loves their Mother Earth, and Cinema Wellman loves Upcycled. Check out their website. It's goupcycled.com. Follow them on Instagram at go_upcycle. And if you live in around the Baltimore area, you can volunteer your time at one of their many planned cleanups. And if you don't live nearby, you can always donate funds to help the cause. And, don't forget to recycle whenever you can, especially plastics. Be good to your mother. Check us out. Look at the blog for more information about the films that we cover here, including all the platforms. I always list all the platforms where you can find it. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter. It's at Cinema Wellman. Again, the blog is cinemawellman.com. You're either watching right now on YouTube or listening on Spotify. Thank you very much for doing that. Next up for you, as I previously mentioned, available Wednesday, November 30th is our next episode, and it's going to be The 70s Show, Part 1. So until next time, take care.